Welcome, everybody, to this week's iteration of Nick's Yemen Roundup, 18 May to 25 May 2025. You're listening to the man himself, Nick Brumfield. It's a pleasure to have all of you. Um, my normal caveats before I start this call: I'm attempting to provide a comprehensive but not necessarily exhaustive account of the political, military, and economic humanitarian events in Yemen over the course of the past week. In doing so, I'm drawing from a wide range of various sources with different partisan and other biases. So just this is my caveat that I'm doing my best here. I've been doing this for many years now. I am putting forward a product that I am very proud of. But if I do make a mistake, or if I omit something that you think is important, or if you just have questions, feel free to drop those in the comments on the video. And hopefully I'll be able to get back to you if I have the time and inclination. But with that, let's move over to the About Me. As I said last week, I'm wanting to put out these videos on a weekly basis, both to provide a resource to the sort of the Yemen researcher community, those interested in Yemen, but it's also in part selfishly an advertisement for myself. I am a freelance political risk researcher, legal consultant researcher. I do a lot of research, but as it relates to kind of the political risk or politics in the Middle East and elsewhere. I have an MA in Arab Studies from Georgetown University, a decade's experience analyzing Middle East politics, not just Yemen, but really throughout the Arab world. I'm regularly quoted in international media as it relates to Yemen, as well as experience in project management, data management, as well as GIS. So really this product is intended to serve as a showcase for what I could do for you if you are interested in contracting with me as a researcher, writer, just general person who can do interesting things with knowledge. And for folks who are interested in that, please feel free to reach out to me at info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com, and I will get back to you as quickly as I'm able. But we can, now that commercial's over, we can go ahead and get started with what you all are actually here for, which is Yemen stuff, starting off with politics and governance as it relates specifically to international affairs. Not a whole lot, not as much going on in international affairs this week as we did see last week. We had several slides last week to discuss what's going on. This week, it's a little bit more, closer to the chest. Most often as it relates to the Yemeni government. We did see various senior level Yemeni government officials, including Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashada Al-Alimi and Foreign Minister Zindani, engage with other prominent officials, most notably on 19 May, when Foreign Minister Zindani met with the UAE's ambassador to Yemen, Mohammed Zoubi. We did see on 21 May as well, PLC Chairman Alimi, as well as Presidential Leadership Council member and Arab Governor Sultan Al Rada engage with U.S. Ambassador to Yemen Stephen Fagan in Riyadh on 21 May. This was not necessarily, at least according to the readout, the happiest of meetings. The Yemeni government has been kind of lobbying the United States to support it against the Houthis for several years now. That obviously picked up quite a bit over the course of the last year and a half, and it picked up even more during that month and a half of U.S. bombing campaign against the Houthis starting in mid-March. That's over now. That ended in early May. And so you've seen in this engagement kind of Alimi kind of pushing back on this idea that there could be a ceasefire with the Houthis. And a lot of anti-Houthi folks in Yemen and elsewhere will say you can't actually have a ceasefire with the Houthis. It's just a deception that they're using to rearm, restructure, and everything for the next round of fighting. So yeah, Alimi reiterated that argument to U.S. Ambassador Fagan and stated that the Houthis, in order to be truly neutralized, must be stripped of their bases of power, namely land, population, and money. Elsewhere, we did see on 21 May, Yemen participate in a high-level meeting of the Arab-China Cooperation Forum in Rabat. Not too much to report from that, but it is interesting to nonetheless. And then on 24 May, we did see Germany announce that it had arrested a Yemeni national in Germany who's allegedly a member of the Houthi movement who fought in the Marib campaign. According to the publicly available information released, The individual is accused of joining the Houthis in, I believe, mid to late 2022, being trained and then fighting with the group in early 2023. Which is interesting just in terms of looking at what was happening in Yemen at that time. We did see the Marib campaign really pick up in late 2022, early 2023, and yeah, all of that. But then we did see there wouldn't have actually been a whole lot of fighting if you think about it, because the truce has been going on in April, since April 2022. So he was reportedly joined and then deployed to a front that wasn't too much fighting, actually. But he was reportedly deployed along that front, and I guess that's enough for them. Doesn't seem like he's a high-level folk or anything. We do see a lot of Yemenis in Houthi-held areas joining and fighting for the Houthis, not necessarily because they're committed ideologues by any means, but because that's a gig that pays in an economy where you don't have a whole lot of paying gigs. Similarly, we also do see a lot of reports of Houthi child recruitment. So I would need to see more information about this particular individual's case to say, like, oh yeah, he's a Houthi, he's not a Houthi, that kind of thing. But it is a much more interesting and nuanced discussion to have, rather than just like he's a terrorist, which is often how the legal system sees it, unfortunately. Moving on over to politics and governance. From the Yemeni government perspective, really a lot of what's been going on this past week, really, and this also took place on the Houthi side, relates to Yemen's Unity Day, also known as Yemen's National Day, which takes place on 22 May. This is a kind of a touchy subject in Yemen. So Yemen actually used to be two separate countries. There was South Yemen, which gained independence from the British in 1967. And then there was North Yemen, which was a theocratic monarchy for several centuries, and then became a republic in the 1960s and 70s. Throughout the mid to late 20th century, they wanted to unite. They finally did unite in 1990. But due to political issues within the United Yemen Republic, there was a civil war in 1994 that saw folks in the kind of the southern portion of Yemen trying to secede from the Republic of Yemen. The southern Yemen only has about 20% of Yemen's population, even though it has most of its oil resources and 70% of its land. So there was tension there about power sharing and everything. Anyway, they tried to pull out, and then the northern Yemenis or the Ali Abdullah Saleh regime, with some support from portions of the leadership from southern Yemen, went in and crushed them. This is a very controversial thing. To this day, remains one of the kind of major cruxes of Yemeni politics, with the Southern Transitional Council wanting to secede, continuing that kind of project, according to what South Yemen was prior to joining Yemen in 1990. So you saw this play out this week with the various parties, sort of addressing Unity Day. The Southern Transitional Council, of course, hates it, does not like it. But we did see Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi, who is ostensibly, claiming to be, president of all of Yemen, and his coalition consists of northern Yemenis, but also is largely, most of the territory that the Yemeni government holds in Yemen is in what we would used to call South Yemen, right? And so a lot of his support is from Southerners, or a lot of his power base is in the South. And so there's this, sort of constant tension that he has to address. So he gives his Unity Day address and says, Yemeni unity is the great thing, which Yemeni nationalists in his coalition are really big about. But at the same time, he stressed the need to address the Southern issue in terms of fairness, in terms of coming to a settlement, not just formally, but sort of on the ground in terms of fairness. And then he kind of flipped the sort of issue on its head by accusing the Houthis more or less imposing secession on Yemen by essentially creating another government and sort of cutting off the Yemeni economy and separating the bonds that tie North and South through their policies, which if you look, the Houthis do that in terms of imposing double taxation on any goods coming from areas of southern Yemen to northern Yemen into areas under their control. And yeah, so interesting address. It contrasts interestingly with the address that the Houthi address that I'll talk about on the next slide. Elsewhere, we did see on 22 May the Supreme Council for the Popular Resistance, which is kind of a decentralized, not necessarily that coherent of a political body, but it claims to represent a bunch of different popular resistance committees that have engaged in armed conflict against the Houthis. Held an expanded meeting in Taz under the leadership of Sheikh Hamoud al-Nakhlafi, who's a major militia leader, has interesting ties to various Gulf states, and is not necessarily the major power player, but he does show up as a spoiler now and again. On 24 May, we also did see anti-STC media report that STC-aligned forces had prevented a third women's march in Aden in Khor-Maksar district. This would have been the third event. Over the course of the last several weekends, we did see women gathering in their hundreds in Aden to protest the ongoing deterioration of living conditions in Aden, particularly as it relates to electricity generation and water services, but also salaries and other things. And this was a big deal. This got a lot of attention. It was seen as morally very powerful. Women, just by virtue of their sort of position in society, are seen as kind of socially unimpeachable. You can't attack them in the same way that you can attack men. And so this was seen as a very potent critique of both Yemeni government and STC-aligned sort of authorities in Aden for their inability to address the concerns that these women were raising. So following the second one, we did see local security authorities state that they were just going to ban all. They didn't say they were banning them because of the women. They said the women were doing it peacefully, but then some people at the protest attacked security, and then they banned all protests in Aden. Figures, right? And so, yeah, so we did see reports that STC-aligned forces did prevent a third women's protest in Aden. So, yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Moving on over to politics and governance in Yemen from the Houthi movement perspective, some interesting things going on. First off, of course, is the Houthis are really playing up their summer camp program. This is something that they do every year. They say that they have 1.25 million students enrolled in their summer camps. These camps are quite controversial. Sort of the use of summer camps to recruit and indoctrinate children isn't necessarily unique to the Houthis in Yemen. We have seen them among some other factions, but the Houthis have been the most systematic and sort of criticized among the groups in terms of just enrolling so many students, but also the sectarian and deeply essentially systematic use of these camps for child recruitment into their armed forces. So yeah, a lot of criticism to go around with that. There's been a lot of criticism against the Houthis over the course of the last month with regards to changing school curricula in areas under their control. For instance, taking English out of the curriculum, trying to cultivate a generation of Yemenis that are less connected internationally and kind of more indoctrinated with the group's ideology. Elsewhere, on 21 May, we did see Houthi authorities reportedly create a new district in Sada Governorate, which is the governorate in northern Yemen, right up against the Saudi border. It's also the Houthi heartland. They created a new district called the Maran district. This is kind of a big deal, and I mean, it seems so small, provincial affairs, but kind of a big deal in a couple of ways. Maran is essentially where the Houthis are from. This is where the movement started. This is where many of its leaders were born. It's also where many of them still are. There's belief that Abdul Malik al-Houthi is kind of hanging out in this area. This is where he's taken refuge many times before. So there's the sense that, they're creating this both as an ideological project to create a Maran district that is kind of them, but also for security reasons to administratively kind of take it away from other people and give it to trusted people, that kind of thing. On 21 May, we also did see Houthi-aligned Supreme Political Council President Mahdi al-Mashad give his Unity Day speech, which you can see him here on the right, just looking very plucky there. And he warned against any attacks on Yemeni unity. He was much less conciliatory to the Southern cause. And was sort of saying, warning essentially foreign powers of don't mess with us, don't use anything that would undermine Yemen's unity or will come for you, which is more or less kind of what the Houthis always say. And then we did see on 24 May, Houthi authorities sentence journalist Mohammed al-Mayahi, who was recently he was detained about less than a year ago, to 1.5 years in prison after he criticized the group on Facebook, which is just not great. We did see the Yemeni journalist syndicate come out and criticize this move, and it's not been great. Elsewhere, in terms of politics and governance from the Houthi movement perspective, we did see on 22 May, Abdul Malik al-Houthi give his weekly address, which, a lot of people like to focus on what he talks about. He's a very long-winded person, and he's very skilled at saying a lot of things without necessarily saying a whole lot. In my opinion, in terms of substance. So I don't highlight him every week because it's just kind of, he says a lot of the same stuff. But interestingly, in this address, he did stress the importance of Gaza amid the renewed Israeli assault there. So this is remaining central to Houthi discourse and thought, Gaza, and sort of what's going on. And so as that intensifies, we have, of course, seen everything at least from the Houthi side intensify. He stressed Gaza and the Houthi attacks on Israel and Yemen's ability to hold out against international attacks. He also interestingly criticized Morocco for normalization. Morocco is, of course, one of the countries that has normalized relations with Israel. Amid all of this, we did see Houthi-aligned authorities hold mass rallies in Sana'a and elsewhere. For Gaza, you see them get a lot of people out, mobilize them under their banners. It's a big win for the Houthis politically to be able to do this. They back in late 2023, early 2024, they were doing hundreds, if not thousands, of protests a week. It was a lot. So they really do like to mobilize for that. We also did see on 23 May, authorities confiscate phones of those who filmed bombings of various sites in Sana'a amid, sort of a Houthi campaign to really try to control information coming out from damage as it relates to the international bombing campaign, either from the United States or Israel. And then we did see on 24 May, anti-Houthi media Defense Line, which seems pretty credible. I think it's a newer publication, or at least one I haven't engaged with as much as other ones, but they have been putting out some pretty interesting reports for the last little while. Did report that there's going to be, the Houthis have formed a new security apparatus, and believe me, they come out with a new one every 6 months or so, called the Revolutionary Security Apparatus under Abdul Malik al-Houthi, that is reportedly going to be managed by Jafar Muhammad Ahmed al-Marhabi, Abu Jafar. It seems to be, part of, the Houthis attempting to, again, consolidate control within the hands of their close inner circle, family, very trusted people, as well as perhaps to sort of spread the security apparatus around so that no single person controls, all the power. And we've seen this happen across a lot of authoritarian regimes, and it's definitely true of the Houthis, who have created, an alphabet soup of security and intelligence organizations over the course of their control of Sana'a. Interestingly, they consolidated all of them early on, sort of after they took over 2015. But now they seem to be duplicating them again, perhaps for the same reasons that a lot of authoritarian regimes do that. Moving on from politics and governance to military and security, really the main things that are worth noting in terms of military and security in Yemen this week took place behind the front lines. In particular in Abiyan Governorate, which is this nice long governorate to the northeast of Aden. This is a strategically important governorate. It's a governorate that sees a lot of conflict, both violent and kind of political, both between the Houthis and non-Houthi forces, but also within within anti-Houthi forces. But this week we did see a lot of news related to Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is kind of hanging out in this kind of area here. If I can if it'll let me do that. Yeah. So this has been an area where it's been known to be conducting operations, mostly attacking STC-aligned forces for years, just constantly kind of going after them, on a weekly basis, very guerrilla warfare stuff. So we did see on 22 May reports from STC-aligned forces that they had thwarted an attempted AQAP IED attack in Mahfad, which is in the east here. And in Mahfad district. And then on 24 May, we did see reports of U.S. airstrikes targeting AQAP leader and other members in Ahwar district, reportedly killing 5, including a local leader, Salim Qasim. This is interesting because some people have framed this as, they're dialing down on the Houthis, now they're dialing up against AQAP. Really, this has been a kind of increased. Sorry, one second. This has been an increased activity that we've seen from the United States, really since President Trump came back into office, even prior to his escalation against the Houthis. We probably, prior to his coming into office, saw kind of a drone strike or suspected maybe the U.S. is doing something against AQAP probably once every 6 months to a year. But since he's come into office, and actually right after he came into office, we saw a number of suspected attacks against AQAP leadership, either airstrikes or otherwise. So it's interesting to sort of see this play out. I think the plausible theory, and I've seen reports that they've kind of done this across the Middle East, is that they've loosened the rules of engagement, and so now it's sort of local, sort of U.S. commanders or people who may have known where these folks have been for a long time, who haven't necessarily been able to engage them because they needed, plausible reason to do so or something. They're engaging on a much more frequent basis, and we have seen that over the course of the last 4 or 5 months. Elsewhere in Hadramaut Governorate, we did see the anti-Houthi representative of Asada Axis, Sheikh Ahmed Shatan, killed in an ambush near Abur Junction. So not too much there. The Houthis accused him of being a Salafi sheikh. They always like to portray their enemies as Salafists, and to be honest, I'm not sure if he is or not. It was interesting. He got ambushed by unknown gunmen. This was in a particular area where you do see a lot of bandits and assassinations and IED attacks, so it's unclear exactly what caused that, but that did happen. Moving on over to the Houthi-Israel conflict, which everyone is, of course, the one interested in. This iconic image now of Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sarya. He's been doing this for years, getting up at that podium and more or less giving the same face. So we did see reports throughout the week of Houthi ballistic missile and drone attacks against, in particular, Ben Gurion Airport as part of what the Houthis call their ongoing air blockade of Israel. And so they've launched, throughout, I won't read them all off to you, but between 18 May and 25 May, a bunch of ballistic missiles. This isn't just them claiming them. They have fired them, but Israel has intercepted most or all of them. That, at the same time, that also did result, they also did at times result in temporary suspensions of air traffic at Ben Gurion. Interestingly, we also did see on 19 May, the Houthis announced a maritime blockade of Haifa port. So this is a port on the Israel's west coast with the Mediterranean Sea. So the Houthis are saying they're imposing a remote blockade on that, essentially threatening to attack any shippers that load there. They've also said that these sanctions will, basically anybody who directly or indirectly loads goods into Haifa port, their entire fleet will be subject to attack by the Houthis anywhere the Houthis can find it, more or less. So this is perhaps an expansion of the maritime conflict that we haven't seen the Houthis necessarily conduct all that many commercial shipping attacks since December. We really, most of their activity has been targeted at Israel directly, and then obviously following the 6 May ceasefire with the United States, part of that was like, we're not going to attack U.S. ships, but it was very vague about, would other ships be covered, and then would the United States kind of get sucked back into this? if the Houthis start attacking shipping again, and we'll see. But yeah, so the Houthis are kind of back at it again with regards to that. We haven't seen an attack claimed yet, or at least I hadn't, as of the kind of the end of my scoping on this yesterday. But yeah, something to note there. Kind of tangential to this, but kind of an interesting side point as it relates to maritime security in Yemen, is actually probably the major maritime, as opposed to attacking Israel, events this past week in the Red Sea didn't concern the Houthis, didn't concern Israel or the United States. It actually concerned Eritrea. So we did see on 20 May, Houthi authorities report that the Eritrean Navy had killed 2 Yemeni fishermen when they fired on their ship or on their fishing boat, and detained 29 others on that same fishing boat when they kind of attacked it on 20 May. And then on 24 May, we did see Eritrea release 37 Yemeni fishermen after they had detained them for a month. Eritrea is a really kind of interesting wild card in the Red Sea that it's relatively little talked about, but essentially Eritrea, for a couple reasons, doesn't really like Yemeni fishermen. There's Yemen and Eritrea had a long-running dispute over the Hanish Islands that were awarded to Yemen as part of international arbitration in 1998, and then there was an agreement about sort of like which side's fishermen would be able to go which place, and it got complicated, and Eritrea kind of disputes the whole thing. But essentially what you see on a regular basis, Eritrean naval forces will kind of directly attack Yemeni fishermen. They will detain them and bring them back to Eritrea, use them as forced labor, and then kind of release them. And they've done this. They've attacked fishermen for years. They have at times kind of tried to go into the Hanish Islands. And there were several years ago there was a standoff between Yemeni Coast Guard forces and Eritrean forces. So yeah, just a little side tidbit. We like to follow Yemen and to understand Yemen and Yemenis, not just as it relates to the current international conflict or even conflict at all, but just kind of on its own terms. And I think this is an interesting and perhaps important dynamic to keep in mind outside of the kind of international headlines that everyone kind of chases. Moving on from military and security, we go over to humanitarian and economic affairs, starting off with humanitarian affairs. And we did see a fair bit of activity around humanitarian funding this week. There's a lot of concern among international actors about the funding of international humanitarian operations in Yemen, particularly as it relates to obviously the US cutting all funding, but also just kind of a general dip in funding. On 20 May, we did see 29 NGOs call on the international community to prioritize funding for Yemen's humanitarian operations on the eve of a senior officials meeting. Just to give you some context, this is a graph from the UNOCHA FTS of the Yemen Humanitarian Response Plan appeals and funding. So you can see how much they asked for each year from 2016 to 2025 and how much they got. And so as you can see here, Yemen at one time, 2019, was one of the best funded humanitarian sort of operations in the world, but we've seen a massive drop off over the course of the last several years. And as of 2025, we're only at about 10% funded, and we're basically halfway through the year. The Houthis have not helped this because the Houthis are constantly abducting humanitarian workers, and so that's getting people to pull out and everything or move their operations to Aden. And so, yeah, we've seen a drastic drop off, and we are seeing that kind of playing out on the ground in terms of inadequate food consumption going up, a lot of different things. And so we did see on 21 May, the European Union pledged 80 million euros for the 2025 humanitarian operations, but that's really a drop in the bucket. Really, they should be asking for about 4 billion. They cut that down to about 2.5, 3 billion because they know that they weren't going to get 4 billion. And even from that, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of what they've gotten. So not great with regards to that. In terms of health and disease, we also did see on 24 May, 25 May, kind of reports of a cholera outbreak in Aden, which is not great. The Aden governor, Ahmed Hamid Lamlas, called on the Yemeni government to kind of address the situation, as Aden is reporting at least 30 cases of cholera a day, something like 255 suspected cases reported since 6 May. Cholera is, there's kind of an ongoing cholera outbreak across Central and Eastern Africa. That Yemen's kind of at the tail end of. It's kind of connected to that. So we do see spikes in cholera from time to time. It's a very horrible disease. Definitely would never want to catch that. So hopefully they can get that under control. Moving on over to humanitarian and economic issues from an infrastructural perspective. Kind of the two ones that everyone's interested in, port and air infrastructure. So some good news with regards to air infrastructure. The Houthis have gotten Sana'a International Airport back up and running after Israel targeted and destroyed much of it earlier in May. That said, concerns remain about the safety of running flights through there. There was a flight, there was a flight took off and there was a bunch of dust and people were worried about, like, is it actually safe to take off for this? So we'll see with regards to that. Hajj also started this past week, or I mean, they've been making preparations for the last couple of weeks. On 24 May, we did see Yemenia report that it will conduct Hajj flights from Sana'a International Airport for about 2,000 pilgrims from Sana'a Airport, but they're only going to operate one plane. This is for a couple of reasons. The most obvious reason is Israel bombed and destroyed 3 of the planes that were at Sana'a International Airport when they attacked it in early May. But the other reason is I don't think they trust the Houthis to be able to run more than one plane. The reason why there were 4 kind of planes sort of just hanging out at Sana'a International Airport when Israel attacked it in early May is because last year during the Hajj, they were running 4 or 5 planes or something between Sana'a and Jeddah to facilitate a good Hajj for everybody and trying to get things going. And then the Houthis just seized 4 of those planes and kind of took them hostage, more or less. I forget what the exact dispute. I think maybe there was a dispute over the control of Yemenia. But they essentially seized those, and then those planes just weren't operating for a year. So Yemenia has purchased other planes. They do have other planes in their fleet, but I think they're going to restrict themselves to 1 this time to limit their liability and their exposure to the Houthis trying to seize them. In terms of port infrastructure, not great news. So throughout the course of the Israeli and then United States strikes on Hodeidah and Ras Isa ports throughout 2024, 2025, we haven't necessarily seen that much of drops in kind of imports as a result of the attacks on that. The Houthis, they've adapted, they've mitigated. There have been some drops, but not necessarily super notable. But we are starting to see in April, particularly following I think the big strike in April was 17 April when the United States hit Ras Isa. We are seeing, the Food and Agriculture Organization report, sharp drops in wheat imports through Hodeidah, as well as fuel discharge through Ras Isa due to airstrike damage. And so we'll definitely need to keep a close eye on that in terms of sort of what they're able to pull in between that and the sanctions and the economic effects on that. It may finally be that we're starting to see the economic crunch that a lot of people like myself have been warning about for about a year now. And that, it's not great. We also did see on 30 April, the Yemen cluster report that at least as of, kind of 8 May, CMA, CGM was continuing its shipping through Aden and Hodeidah. And reportedly, most humanitarians are now using Aden port to bring in goods, something like 87%. Whereas only 20% are using Hodeidah port. I need to look at historical data to see if this is a massive shift as a result of the FTO designation, which is causing a lot of humanitarian organizations to reorient their activities to Aden as opposed to Sana'a. But we'll check that out. And then in terms of kind of other infrastructure developments, good news, I suppose, on 19 May, we did see with regards to road infrastructure, local authorities kind of seemingly aligned with the STC, local forces, opened the Sana'a Damped Aden Road for humanitarian purposes. This was a road that's been closed for several years now, so that's good. In terms of water infrastructure, we did see on 19 May the water crisis reportedly worsen in Taz amid widespread unavailability and very high costs. This has been something that's been going on for a while now, not only in Taz, but also in Aden. We've been seeing water shortages. And on 21 May, the Yemeni government-aligned Water and Sanitation Department in Aden blamed these essentially on kind of massive debt and a lot of financial sort of problems within the system of water distribution. We'll see how they resolve that. But yeah, that was one of the major kind of demands of the Women's March. And then with regards to energy infrastructure, interestingly, we did see on 24 May, Yemeni government Prime Minister Salim bin Barak ordered the use of oil from Ukla, the Ukla fields, which is in, I believe, northeastern Shabwa governorate here. This is interesting because the Ukla fields are currently about to be evacuated in about 5 days, or given up in 5 days by OMV, the Austrian oil company. This is a company that's been trying to exit the Yemen fields for a very long time, since the beginning of the Houthi blockade in 2022. They're finally getting out. Their leaving has been a very controversial thing. People think that people shouldn't be they shouldn't be allowed to leave. They should be forced to continue paying local employees who are dependent on them for their livelihoods. They are reportedly transferring operations of the Shabwa Block S2 to the Ministry of Oil, which is going to manage it. Not sure exactly how that's going to go, but as a result of that, we did see Yemeni government Prime Minister bin Barak order the use of 4,000 barrels from the Ukla fields on a daily basis to essentially ship it from there to Aden to run the power plants there. This is interesting because this is how a lot of Aden fuel comes in. It comes in through Shabwa, it comes in through Hadramaut, but it's not always. It's very, very exposed to blockades or attacks or people trying to stop fuel. And that's one of the major levers that a lot of different political groups use against the Yemeni government, is stopping that fuel. So it's not clear that that's going to stop all of the issues that we've seen with electricity generation in Aden. And in fact, actually, just before I got on this, I didn't incorporate it into the call, but today we are seeing reports of, outages or almost total outages in Lahej and everything. So that's all I have from me. Thank you so much for listening. In terms of related readings this week, a couple good ones out. I do want to highlight Sana Center for Strategic Studies put out a piece by Dr. Abdel Al-Bashela, Saudi Arabia's new approach towards Yemen's northern tribes. He's kind of the foremost expert writing in English on that, so definitely check him out. It's a good piece. And then we did see South 24, Houthi military ventures deepen Yemen's economic wounds. Put out a piece. They did it in Arabic and in English. I'll check out either one depending on which language you prefer. I'm actually quoted in that one, so it's a bit of a self promo. But again, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. If you do want to reach out to me for professional inquiries, please feel free to contact me at, again, info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.